Maya Thompson, a resilient and intelligent black woman, was respected throughout her community. At 42, she was among the few black women to have achieved success in medicine, particularly in research and health care. Mia's journey to building her career was an inspiring story, beginning with her days as a young, ambitious medical student who constantly faced scrutiny and doubt from her colleagues in an industry dominated by white men. For Mia, each success was a victory, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated because of their skin color or gender. Mia's relentless dedication was finally recognized. She had earned numerous awards and accolades throughout her career, but what Mia took the most pride in was not the titles or certificates. It was the trust of the patients she had helped heal. To her, each patient was not just a case, but a life needing saving. This love and sense of responsibility for her work set Mia apart more than anything else. This dedication also meant that Mia often worked long hours at the hospital. The extended shifts sometimes left her physically and mentally exhausted, yet Mia never stopped striving for her patients. That evening was no exception. After a grueling 14-hour day in the intensive care unit, where she had faced critical cases, Mia finally left the hospital. The cool autumn air felt refreshing, like a soothing breeze, easing the stress and weariness that had built up over the day. As she stepped out of the hospital, her mind was still racing with the day's images. Patients lying in beds, medical charts that needed careful reading, doses that required precise calculation, and urgent consultations to save lives. But Mia knew that waiting ahead of her was a home with warm lights and a loving husband. At that moment, she wanted nothing more than to go home, unwind, and leave behind everything that had happened at the hospital. However, before heading home, she remembered that she needed to stop by the pharmacy to pick up medication for her husband. David, Mia's partner, was a senior government official. Not only was he a devoted husband, but he was also a tireless advocate for civil rights and social reform programs. David was Mia's greatest source of encouragement, and no matter how busy she was, she always tried to make time for him. Recently, David had experienced a minor health issue, and his doctor had prescribed new medication, which Mia had promised to pick up. Despite feeling exhausted after a long day, Mia felt a sense of responsibility. The bond and understanding between them were the foundation of their family, and she didn't want to disappoint David. Mia's car, a modest silver sedan, was parked inconspicuously in the hospital's staff parking lot. This car was not just her means of transportation, but also a way to maintain privacy and avoid drawing attention when she didn't want to stand out. That evening, Mia drove through the cool night air, the streetlights casting a glow on the empty streets. Though the surroundings were peaceful, Mia couldn't shake a sense of unease, a natural vigilance she had developed after years of living as a black woman in society. Sometimes the ordinary can conceal risks, and Mia knew that a single glance could make her the target of unwarranted judgment. The pharmacy Mia visited was located in an upscale neighborhood, surrounded by luxury boutiques and quiet cafes. Most of the stores had already closed for the night, leaving only a few dim lights from the signs on the street. Mia parked, stepped out of her sedan, and pulled her white coat tightly around herself to ward off the chill. The doctor's coat, faintly scented with antiseptic, reminded her of the job she had just left behind. She walked briskly toward the pharmacy, eager to complete this last task of the day so she could finally go home and rest. But Mia was unaware that a police car was silently patrolling the area. Inside the patrol car sat Lucas Walker, an experienced officer with a suspicious, unsmiling gaze. Lucas was a middle-aged man with a stern demeanor and deep-seated biases, always harboring suspicion toward those he felt didn't belong in certain places. And when Lucas's eyes landed on Mia, a black woman walking confidently in an upscale neighborhood, unfavorable assumptions immediately formed in his mind. Feeling dissatisfied with his job and life, Lucas seemed to find an outlet for his simmering frustration in Mia. He decided to observe her more closely, and at that moment, Mia had no idea she was stepping into a situation that could forever change her life. As Mia stepped out of her car, the chilly autumn night made her shiver. She wrapped her white coat tightly around herself, hoping to quickly get into the pharmacy to pick up David's medicine and then head home. But as soon as the car door closed behind her, a bright spotlight suddenly shone on her, forcing Mia to squint against the light. A police car was slowly approaching, its headlights aimed directly at her as if to make her stop. Mia felt a coldness pass over her, not only from the night breeze but from the situation itself. She had heard stories of black people being treated unfairly, watched and questioned merely for existing in certain spaces. She had experienced moments of judgment because of her skin color, but never in a place where she had lived and worked so devotedly. Inside the police car, Lucas Walker watched Mia intently. A seasoned officer, Lucas was no stranger to night patrols, but something about Mia, a black woman appearing in a doctor's coat in an upscale area, made him uneasy. Raised in a conservative neighborhood with ingrained societal biases, Lucas was accustomed to judging people by appearances. To him, there was an invisible line between those who belong here and outsiders. And Mia, despite her professional attire and confident demeanor, clearly didn't belong in his eyes. Sitting motionless in the car for a moment, Lucas observed Mia from afar, his mind jumping to assumptions without any real evidence. What could she be doing here at this hour? He wondered, feeling as if her presence was an intrusion into the territory he was responsible for protecting. Part of him wanted to immediately question her to ensure security. Lucas had spent years as a police officer, but he felt his life and career had stagnated with no advancement. Frustrations from both his personal and professional life had turned him into a man filled with resentment, prone to bursts of anger. Without notifying headquarters, Lucas decided to handle this on his own. He drove closer, his headlights still glaring at Mia, creating a still, tense space. Mia could feel his gaze on her. She tried to stay calm, but a wave of anxiety rose within her. "There's nothing to fear," she reminded herself. Yet deep down, Mia knew that sometimes simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time could place her in an unwanted situation. Lucas stepped out of the car, his expression cold and his gaze scrutinizing. With an imposing stance and deliberate movements, he approached Mia, his hand resting on his holster in an unconscious display of authority. Mia observed him from a distance, feeling herself subjected to an unfair test. She was used to maintaining composure, but a mix of anger and frustration simmered inside her. Why should she have to endure this, just to buy her husband's medicine? Mia took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, recalling the advice David often gave her. Whenever you're in trouble, remember to stay as composed as possible. With her experience in medicine, Mia knew that any display of emotion could be misinterpreted, potentially escalating the situation. Nevertheless, she couldn't shake the discomfort from the unfairness unfolding before her. Lucas stopped in front of her, his cold gaze looking down at her. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked, his tone questioning and unfriendly, as if she were committing some grave offense. Mia raised her chin, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm a doctor at the nearby hospital. I'm here to pick up some medicine for my husband." She emphasized each word, hoping this simple explanation would ease the tension. But Lucas had no intention of diffusing the situation. His gaze flicked over Mia's white coat and hospital badge, but their presence seemed meaningless to him. To Lucas, the coat was just a mask hiding the truth he believed. He gave a sneering smile as if the idea of a black doctor was too far-fetched. "A doctor?" Lucas repeated mockingly. "In this neighborhood? How come I didn't know your hospital had staff like you?" His words dripped with suspicion and disdain, as if the idea of a black doctor was something he couldn't accept. Mia felt a surge of anger rise inside her, but she held it back and kept her voice calm. "Yes, I'm a doctor," she replied shortly, determined not to let Lucas provoke her. "And I've made it clear why I'm here." Yet, Lucas continued to close the distance, invading her personal space, his gaze coldly examining every detail of Mia's face. "I wanted to see your ID," he ordered. Mia slowly reached into her coat pocket for her ID, feeling the injustice of the situation but not wanting to give him more reasons to harass her. Lucas took her hospital ID and driver's license, barely glancing at her name or occupation. In his mind, none of it mattered. He had already made his judgment. "Being a doctor doesn't mean anything here," he said, his tone laced with contempt. Mia stood there, trying to suppress her anger, but the feeling of being demeaned overwhelmed her. This wasn't a routine check. It was an interrogation, and Lucas seemed to be relishing the power he wielded in this situation. Despite her cooperation, Lucas seemed determined to provoke her, watching her with a mocking gaze and a disdainful tone. "Who do you think you are, walking in this neighborhood at this hour without being questioned?" Lucas asked, his voice cold and full of malice. He couldn't accept that someone like Mia could display confidence without fear. To him, it felt like a challenge. Mia sensed that this encounter would not end easily. Each word Lucas spoke, each contemptuous glance, seemed intended to belittle her, to remind her of her place in his eyes. But Mia, though filled with frustration, stood tall, patiently responding to each of his questions without giving him a chance to push the situation further. When Lucas asked to search her car, Mia knew this was no longer a standard check. This was intimidation. She reminded herself to stay calm, but deep down, she felt a profound sense of violation. She looked at him with a firm gaze, silently promising herself not to let this man make her feel inferior. But Lucas was determined to do everything he could to prove Mia didn't belong there. He turned to look directly at her, as if challenging her, ready to proceed with a search only he felt necessary. Lucas didn't stop at asking Mia for her ID and driver's license. Unsatisfied, he went on to demand that Mia unlock her car so he could inspect the interior. Mia hesitated, a clear sense of unease rising within her, but she knew that refusing would only make things worse. She kept her voice calm and said, "Fine, officer." Then she slowly unlocked the car and stepped aside, allowing Lucas to search freely. Lucas began rifling through every compartment in Mia's car with no regard for her personal belongings. He opened the glove compartment and found a small red velvet box, a gift Mia had carefully chosen to give David for their wedding anniversary. Lucas opened the box and saw a simple yet elegant gold ring inside. He held up the ring, inspecting it closely, then suddenly turned to Mia with a sneer. "Nice ring," Lucas said mockingly. "Are you sure you bought this? Are you sure it's yours, or did you steal it from somewhere?" Lucas's words felt like a dagger straight to Mia's pride. The ring wasn't just an expensive piece of jewelry, it held special meaning. It was a gift she had chosen carefully, a symbol of her love and care for her husband. Mia felt anger rising within her, but she knew that reacting too strongly would only put her at a disadvantage. Taking a deep breath, she tried to remain composed, her voice steady. "This ring is mine. I bought it with my own money, officer." Her gaze was unwavering, as if to assert that she had nothing to hide or be ashamed of, but Lucas didn't stop. He continued rummaging through every compartment, opening drawers and roughly moving Mia's belongings. His intense focus on every insignificant item in her car made her feel humiliated and violated. This was no longer a routine check. It was an insult, an intrusion that Lucas seemed to relish as a way to assert his power. Mia stood by, struggling to keep calm. She knew she had to remain cooperative, but a feeling of helplessness and anger surged within her. She had done everything right, always strived to live with integrity and dedicate herself to her work, but none of that seemed to matter at this moment. Simply because of her skin color, she was being treated like a criminal. As Lucas continued his search, he threw in sarcastic comments. "You must be proud of your job, huh?" he said, his tone dripping with scorn. "Out here, that white coat means nothing. Here, you're nothing." He emphasized his words, seeming to take pleasure in belittling Mia, reminding her that in his eyes she didn't deserve respect. Lucas's words hit Mia like a hammer blow to her self-worth. She bit her lip, trying to suppress her anger and hurt. She wanted to respond, to stand up for herself, but she knew that even a small reaction could escalate the situation. She had overcome many obstacles to achieve her career, and she didn't want it all to be jeopardized by a meaningless confrontation. Yet, the sense of humiliation and helplessness swelled inside her, making her feel as though she might cry. As Lucas continued to abuse his authority, the injustice and indignation of the situation grew clearer. This wasn't just about Mia. It was about everyone who had ever been mistreated, judged by appearance or stereotyped. Every action of Lucas's was a reminder of the injustices many people face simply for not fitting society's biased standards. Even so, Mia held on to her composure, standing with admirable patience. She knew that any sign of agitation could be used by Lucas as ammunition against her. He would seize any opportunity to undermine her, to make her feel small and powerless, but Mia had faced too much to be easily subdued. No matter how Lucas looked at her or how cruel his words were, she resolved not to let him see her break. Eventually, after scouring every compartment and finding nothing suspicious, Lucas slammed the car door shut, his eyes filled with frustration and anger. He stepped close to Mia, as if waiting for a reaction, some small sign that he could use to continue his harassment. "Who do you think you are, standing there looking at me like that?" he demanded, his voice sharp and arrogant. He didn't just want control of the situation. He wanted control of Mia's emotions, to see her bow down and submit. Mia looked Lucas straight in the eye, unwavering. Inside, she was still burning with anger, but she knew she couldn't let her emotions take control. Each of Lucas's words was a provocation, a reminder that he was trying to push her into a weaker position. Yet she didn't respond, maintaining her steady gaze, silently asserting that she wouldn't be dominated. Lucas glared at her, his eyes filled with rage. He couldn't stand Mia's calm silence, couldn't bear that she wasn't letting him take charge, and in that moment, Mia realized that this was more than a personal insult. It was a deeper confrontation. She wasn't just facing a discriminatory officer, but also a system and a mindset embedded in society, a way of thinking that judged and belittled people based on appearances, disregarding who they truly were. Their confrontation continued in tense silence, neither one backing down. Lucas, unable to accept Mia's resilience, became even more determined to teach her a lesson. But Mia, though filled with anger and hurt, remained steadfast. She knew that her silence, her resolve, was her way of resisting, of showing him that no matter the injustice, she would not be subdued. As Mia struggled to keep her composure in the tense situation, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the edge of the parking lot, where the search was taking place. The car door opened, and David stepped out, his tall frame and confident movements immediately drawing the attention of those nearby. Though outwardly calm, his gaze was sharp and resolute. With a single glance, he understood the situation Mia was facing. David was known for his restraint, but seeing Mia, the wife he loved and respected, being treated like a criminal ignited a surge of anger and pain within him. He approached, with his anger hidden behind a low, steady voice, but his words were firm. "Excuse me, but can someone tell me what's going on here?" David asked, his eyes fixed unflinchingly on Lucas. Lucas turned, his piercing gaze meeting David's unyielding stare. Though taken aback by David's sudden appearance, Lucas had no intention of backing down. He stood tall, his hand resting casually on his holster, a silent assertion of his authority. Lucas jerked his chin toward Mia and said with a sneer, "Your wife here seemed a bit suspicious, being around at this time. I'm just doing my job, ensuring public safety." Mia stood still, feeling a wave of relief at David's presence, though she knew he was struggling to contain his rising anger. She could see the worry and pain in his eyes, not just because she was being mistreated, but because he felt helpless for not being able to protect her from the beginning. David took a deep breath, keeping his calm, though his voice grew sharper. "She's here to pick up medication for me. She's a doctor, just finished a long shift at the hospital, and you have no right to humiliate her like this." Lucas smirked, a mocking smile spreading across his face. "You think I'll just let her go because she's a doctor?" Lucas asked, his tone filled with defiance. "Out here, titles and status mean nothing. Everyone has to follow the rules, even those who think they're special." David felt his anger intensify. He knew that, to Lucas, this wasn't a routine check. It was an abuse of power, a blatant show of arrogance by a man using his authority to oppress others. He knew he had to keep his temper in check to avoid escalating the situation further, but he couldn't simply stand by and watch his wife be degraded like this. David stepped closer to Lucas, his gaze steely, and said in a low, firm voice, "You're overstepping your authority, and you know it. There is no reason for you to be questioning and searching her like this. My wife has done nothing wrong, and I suggest you stop immediately." Sensing the challenge in David's words, Lucas tightened his grip on his holster, his eyes flashing with anger. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially by someone asserting their rights, and he was reluctant to admit he might have crossed the line. "Who do you think you are to tell me what to do?" Lucas asked coldly, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is my duty, and you have no right to interfere. I have the right to check anyone I find suspicious." David felt his anger flare, but he maintained his calm. He knew that any wrong move or word could be used by Lucas to escalate the situation. But that didn't lessen the heartbreak he felt seeing Mia, this strong, loving woman he admired, being belittled by this officer's arrogance and prejudice. The sight of Mia, standing silently, her expression weary and hurt, twisted his heart. "She is not a threat, and you know that," David said, his voice as cold and firm as ever. "She doesn't deserve to be treated this way just because of your assumptions and biases. If you continue, I'll have no choice but to take this matter to higher authorities." Mia stood beside David, filled with gratitude and pride. Although David maintained a calm exterior, she knew he was wrestling with his anger and hurt. She felt his love and protection in his gaze, giving her the strength to stand her ground. Lucas, however, refused to back down. His pride and ego seemed too large to allow him to yield. "You think you can intimidate me into changing my mind?" Lucas said with a sneer. "I know my authority, and you can't use your position to threaten me." David held Lucas's gaze, unwavering. "I don't need to threaten anyone," he replied, his voice calm yet authoritative. "It's just a reminder, you have no right to insult and oppress others. Remember, every action you take has consequences." Sensing the pressure in David's words, Lucas hesitated for a moment, but his pride wouldn't let him fully concede. "Fine, you two can go," Lucas said, his tone laced with bitterness and sarcasm. "But don't think I'll forget this. I'll remember both of you, and I'll be watching any moves you make in the future." David didn't respond, only staring firmly at Lucas, his gaze challenging. He held Mia's hand tightly, offering her strength and reassurance. He gently guided her away from the tense situation, but they both knew this was far from over. They would not let this abuse of power and injustice go unanswered. As they walked away from the parking lot, David squeezed Mia's hand, his voice low but filled with resolve. "We won't let this go, Mia. I'll do everything I can to protect you and make sure people like him can't continue to harm others." Mia nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude and trust. Despite the painful, tense ordeal they had just endured, she knew she wasn't alone. With David by her side, she felt more protected and stronger than ever. Together, they walked away from the shadow of injustice, carrying with them the determination not to let those who abuse power continue to damage others' lives. David couldn't forget that day. Each time he recalled the sight of Mia being unjustly treated by Lucas, a surge of anger and helplessness rose within him. Mia wasn't just his wife. She was a compassionate and strong woman who tirelessly worked to help others. David was determined to stand up for her honor and expose Lucas's abuse of power, not only to seek justice for Mia, but also to prevent such incidents from happening to others. To prepare for this grueling legal battle, David reached out to his longtime friend, Henry Cavill. Henry had once been a talented police officer, but left the force after witnessing too much injustice and cover-ups. Now, a seasoned private investigator, Henry understood the system and how it protected those who abused their power. When David asked for his help, Henry agreed immediately. He knew this would be a long and challenging fight, but he saw it as an opportunity to contribute to change within a system he'd once lost faith in. Henry wasn't just a good friend. He was someone who had directly experienced injustice within the police force. Years of witnessing the protection of abusive officers had left Henry with a deep sense of inner conflict and pain. Eventually, he chose to leave, unable to remain part of a system he felt no longer represented fairness. He shared his painful experiences with David, strengthening David's resolve. David knew that this battle wasn't just against Lucas, but against an entire system that protected people like him. Henry began his work by researching Lucas's records and complaints. It wasn't easy. Lucas seemed to be well shielded by the system. Any information related to accusations against him was concealed, and it took great effort for Henry to access some sidelined records. These documents revealed that Lucas's abuse of power extended beyond Mia. He had a history of intimidation and harassment towards others. After several sleepless nights, Henry finally found a few complaints related to Lucas. The documents detailed similar incidents where Lucas had used his authority to intimidate and oppress individuals he deemed undeserving of respect. However, nearly all these complaints had been dismissed or handled internally. To David and Henry, this was evidence of a systematic pattern of abuse, something they could use to build a case against Lucas. Though they had uncovered initial clues, the battle was far from over. David faced resistance from those within the system who supported Lucas. Every attempt to access information or seek assistance was met with cold stares or refusals. Some within the system warned David that if he kept digging, he would face unforeseen consequences, implying it would be better to let the matter drop and avoid stirring up trouble. But David and Henry refused to back down. Determined, they sought out witnesses and others who had been mistreated by Lucas. These meetings were not always easy. Some people were reluctant out of fear of retaliation, while others simply didn't want to be involved with the police. Yet, after much effort, they found several witnesses willing to speak up. One of them was Benjamin, a middle-aged man who had been harassed and treated roughly by Lucas while standing outside his own home. Benjamin had filed a complaint, but it had been ignored, and he never received an apology or explanation from the police. The accounts from Benjamin and others were powerful evidence that Lucas was far from a fair and just officer. Henry and David meticulously documented each detail, each story, piecing together a comprehensive portrait of Lucas's abuses of power. For David, this wasn't just about seeking justice for Mia, but also about defending the dignity of everyone who had been harmed by Lucas. Additionally, they decided to approach a company near the parking lot, hoping there might be security cameras that recorded the events of that night. After multiple attempts at persuasion and assurances of confidentiality, they finally gained the cooperation of the manager. They eventually secured a security camera video showing parts of the incident, including Lucas rummaging through Mia's car and treating her disrespectfully. Though the footage didn't capture the entire event clearly, it was valuable evidence of the violation of Mia's rights. Meanwhile, David and Henry realized that their battle was not only with Lucas, but also with the system that protected him. During the investigation, Henry discovered that Lucas had connections with high-ranking officials in the department, people who had shielded him from accusations and kept him safe. Rather than being discouraged, this discovery only strengthened their determination. David understood that exposing the truth would require the support of both the media and the public. David and Henry reached out to a prominent lawyer known for cases involving police misconduct, hoping to gain additional legal support for their fight. They approached Lily Collins, a lawyer renowned for her success in handling cases against abusive police officers. Lily listened to David and Mia's story, reviewed the evidence they had gathered, and agreed to take the case, promising to do everything she could to bring it to light. Together, Lily, David, and Henry began preparing for a challenging legal fight. Lily helped them build a comprehensive case with evidence, witness statements, and supporting documents to reveal Lucas's abuses and the system's cover-ups. At the same time, she warned them to brace for any retaliation from within the system. Those defending Lucas would stop at nothing to protect the department's image and reputation. In the days that followed, David and Mia received numerous anonymous threats attempting to discourage them. Mia felt a sense of worry and unease as she saw her loved ones drawn into this dangerous battle. But she knew there was no turning back. Her story and everything she had endured needed to be told. No one deserved to go through what she had, and no one should be mistreated simply because of their race. Despite the difficulties, David, Mia, Henry, and Lily remained steadfast. They knew that this fight could be long and grueling, but they refused to give up. Each passing day only fueled their resolve, knowing they were fighting for a just and significant cause. To them, this struggle was not only about securing justice for Mia, but also about defending the core values society should uphold: fairness, respect, and accountability. With persistence and courage, they pressed forward in their legal battle, carrying the hope that they could change even a small part of the unjust system they faced. After weeks of gathering evidence and thorough preparation, David and Mia, along with lawyer Lily Collins, officially filed a lawsuit with the Internal Investigation Agency. They knew this decision would initiate a difficult battle, but it was an essential first step to restore justice for Mia and expose Lucas's abuses of power. Lily, a lawyer renowned for her strong, decisive approach, had extensive experience with cases involving police misconduct. From the start, she knew that she would face numerous obstacles, especially from those protecting Lucas within the system. Yet, Lily was undaunted, as she firmly believed in the value of justice and was determined to help Mia overcome this challenge. As soon as the lawsuit was made public, Lucas immediately went on the defensive. He knew that if the case went through, his career could be over. Rather than facing his actions, Lucas chose to retaliate by smearing David and Mia's reputation. He employed every dirty tactic he could to shift the narrative, spreading false rumors and fabricating stories to tarnish their credibility. Lucas started spreading malicious rumors, claiming that Mia was not as innocent as she claimed. He painted a picture of Mia as a troublemaker and uncooperative on that fateful evening. Lucas even accused her of deliberately provoking him, obstructing his duties to manipulate the situation for financial gain from the lawsuit. These fabricated stories were spread everywhere, from colleagues within the police department to people in the community where Mia lived and worked. Although baseless, these rumors began to influence how some people viewed Mia and David. Faced with the rumors and Lucas's counterattacks, Mia felt shocked and hurt. She not only had to endure the initial injustice, but now also had to face the damaging slander against her dignity. David was also furious, seeing the suffering his wife was subjected to. However, Lily had anticipated this scenario and took immediate action to protect their reputation. Lily organized a press conference to make an official statement about the lawsuit. During the press conference, she emphasized that this was not a personal vendetta, but a fight to protect everyone's rights. Looking directly into the camera, she spoke firmly. "We have filed this lawsuit not just to seek justice for Mia, but to prevent further abuse of power by people like Lucas. No one deserves to be treated this way, and we will not stop until the full truth is revealed." Throughout the press conference, Lily seized every opportunity to stress that Mia was a dedicated doctor who had given her all to the community. Not only did she defend Mia, but she also used the platform to rebut Lucas's false claims, asserting that his actions were nothing more than cowardly attempts to cover up his wrongdoings. Lily also highlighted the evidence and witness testimonies they had collected, proving Mia's complete innocence. When Lucas saw that his attempts to tarnish Mia's reputation were not yielding the results he had hoped, he shifted his tactics. He decided to leverage his connections within the police department and some local media outlets to apply reverse pressure on David and Mia. He tried to amplify the rumors, casting himself as a victim, being pursued by people with personal vendettas. Lucas painted himself as a wronged hero, insisting that he was only doing his job. The public began to divide. Some people believed Lucas's story, thinking that David and Mia were merely trying to profit from the lawsuit. But Lily didn't let that deter them. She, along with David and Mia, persisted in countering every accusation and piece of misinformation with solid, undeniable evidence. She continuously engaged with the media, recounting Mia's story with detailed and substantiated facts, allowing the public to see the true nature of the case. Beyond that, Lily worked tirelessly with witnesses, those who had suffered from Lucas's abuse of power but had been too afraid to speak up. She persuaded each person, assuring them of protection if they agreed to testify. Every testimony, every detail about Lucas's misconduct added weight to the case. For Lily, this battle was not only about protecting Mia and David's reputation, but also about ending Lucas's chain of abuses against others. As the struggle dragged on, community support for Mia grew. People who had endured similar injustices at the hands of officers like Lucas began approaching Mia and David, sharing their own stories and expressing their gratitude. Mia realized her story had become a source of encouragement for others to stand up and no longer accept power abuse in silence. This only strengthened her resolve, helping her endure the fears and pain she had felt since the incident began. In the following days, Lucas continued to devise new tactics to discourage Mia and David. But each time they felt weary, Lily motivated them to remain resilient. "This fight isn't just for the two of you, but for everyone who has been oppressed by this system," she reminded them during an emotional meeting. Lily knew that to win this case, they had to stay steadfast, unaffected by rumors or underhanded tactics. Lily continued to intensify the lawsuit, using every legal means to expose the truth and counter Lucas's accusations. Not only was she defending Mia, but she was also determined to set a precedent, sending a message to other officers that abuse of power would not go unpunished. She and her team relentlessly gathered evidence, strengthened their case, and built a solid legal strategy to confront Lucas's schemes. Gradually, the truth began to spread. Members of the community who had initially believed Lucas started to see his true nature through the evidence and testimonies. Under public and media pressure, even Lucas's colleagues, who had once supported him, began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with him. Despite countless obstacles and trials, David, Mia, and Lily persevered on their journey to justice. They knew this fight might be long and arduous, but they refused to give up. Each passing day renewed their determination, reminding them that they were fighting for a noble cause, to stop those who abuse their power from harming others and to build a fairer society for all. The hearing took place in a tense and heavy atmosphere. The courtroom was packed with people, from journalists and community members to leaders and families who had silently endured abuses of power by the system. David and Mia, accompanied by attorney Lily Collins, sat opposite Lucas and his legal team. Despite his attempt to maintain composure, Lucas could not hide the worry in his eyes. Lily had meticulously prepared for every detail of this hearing. She knew that this was not only an opportunity to reveal the truth about Lucas, but also a crucial turning point in the journey to secure justice for Mia and everyone who had suffered under his abuse of authority. She believed that the evidence, the witnesses' testimonies, and Mia and David's determination would form an unstoppable force. The witnesses who were present on the night of the incident were the first to be called. They recounted the scene of Mia being threatened and mistreated by Lucas. One witness, a passerby at the parking lot at the time, described the fear he saw in Mia's eyes as Lucas repeatedly scrutinized and searched her car. "I could see she just wanted to leave, but he wouldn't let her," the witness said in a rough voice, his gaze filled with empathy. "He looked at her with a contemptuous, hostile glare I can't forget." This testimony was the first in a series of accounts from other eyewitnesses, each adding to the portrayal of Lucas as a man who wielded his power to intimidate and oppress. The image of Lucas's cold and unfeeling actions that night began to solidify in the minds of everyone present in the hearing. The testimonies fueled anger in the audience, with some people shedding tears as they listened to how Lucas had tormented Mia. Then came the testimonies from people who had suffered at Lucas's hands in the past. They recounted their experiences, from incidents where Lucas intentionally ignored their complaints to times he outright threatened and humiliated them. Each story painted a vivid picture of a consistent pattern of abusive behavior, leaving the listeners unsettled. The tension in the room intensified when a middle-aged man named Benjamin took the witness stand. Benjamin, a former neighbor of Lucas, had endured years of intimidation from him. He recounted his story in a somber voice, recalling one night when he was merely standing outside his house to enjoy the evening air, only for Lucas to approach and accuse him of loitering in the area. "He started shouting at me like I was a criminal, even though I was just standing in front of my own house," Benjamin said, his voice shaking. "He told me I didn't belong there and threatened to arrest me if I didn't know my place and go inside." Benjamin's story sparked a wave of emotion in the courtroom. He described the helplessness and humiliation he felt, being treated with rudeness and disrespect right in his own home. His words stirred empathy among everyone present, and the audience couldn't help but feel outraged over what Benjamin had endured. When Benjamin reached the part where Lucas pushed him against a wall and threatened him, he choked up. He recounted the frustration of knowing that all his complaints were ignored or dismissed. "I went to the police station to file a report, but no one listened to me. They told me to go home and stop causing trouble." Tears streamed down Benjamin's face as he turned to the audience, his words piercing the hearts of those listening. Benjamin's appearance wasn't just another testimony. It was a symbol of resilience for all those who had been silenced out of fear. He represented those who lacked a voice, and his bravery and standing up moved everyone in the courtroom. Lily seized the opportunity, delving deeper into Benjamin's testimony and those of others, emphasizing the injustice of the system that had shielded Lucas. She presented dismissed complaint records and documents proving that Lucas had repeatedly violated citizens' rights without facing consequences. "This system did not protect people like Benjamin and Mia," Lily said, her voice strong and unwavering. "Instead, it protected people like Lucas, allowing them to abuse their power without accountability." Lucas sat across from them, his face pale, as he listened to each witness' statement. He tried to maintain his composure but could not hide the anxious look in his eyes. The evidence that Lily, along with David and Mia, had compiled, combined with the victims' testimonies, placed enormous pressure on Lucas, causing him to lose control. Each statement was another blow to his carefully constructed facade, stripping away the false image he had cultivated for so long. With each testimony, the community saw Lucas's true nature more clearly. The anger in the room grew as people realized Lucas wasn't just a man who abused his power, but someone who had exploited it to oppress defenseless people. Some audience members were moved to tears as they heard about the fear and harm Lucas had inflicted on innocent people. As the hearing reached its peak, Mia listened to each testimony with a heavy heart, but she also felt a deep sense of pride. She realized this battle was not just her own. It was a voice for everyone who had been oppressed by authority. Seeing Benjamin and others courageously come forward, she felt her faith in justice strengthened. After listening to the powerful testimonies and clear evidence, the jury decided to adjourn to deliberate on their final decision. The courtroom fell into a tense silence with everyone waiting anxiously. Lily looked at David and Mia, offering an encouraging smile. She knew this journey had been long and challenging, but they had held their ground to the very end. David placed a hand on Mia's shoulder, his eyes filled with hope and gratitude. He understood that regardless of the outcome, they had fought their hardest for justice. As the jury exited the room, murmurs filled the air. Community members, supporters of Mia, exchanged encouraging glances. Everyone knew the upcoming decision would not only be for Mia, but for all who had suffered from abuse of power. Mia sat quietly, her heart swelling with many emotions. She had once suffered in silence, but now, with the support and courage of those around her, she had risen, turning her story into a voice for those who could not speak for themselves. The sound of the jury's footsteps echoed outside, signaling that the long-awaited moment had arrived. The entire courtroom fell silent, with everyone watching and waiting for the verdict they had been hoping for. Each word from the council's ruling resonated with weight. Phrases like severe abuse of authority and human rights violations ringing through the courtroom. The final verdict: Lucas would be immediately suspended and face criminal charges for abuse of power and intimidation of citizens. The courtroom erupted into applause, cheers, and even tears of joy at the announcement. At last, the system was no longer shielding Lucas. He bowed his head, his face drained of color, stunned by the outcome. The years he had spent wielding his power to oppress and intimidate others had come to an end, and now he had to face the consequences of his actions. David and Mia sat still, briefly, as the realization of justice settled in. All their emotions, anger, tension, and buried pain, converged, and in that moment, they felt like they had triumphed in a seemingly endless battle. David held Mia's hand tightly, their eyes meeting in a look of deep pride and gratitude. After sleepless nights and relentless pressures, they knew this was the reward they had fought for. Lily Collins, their lawyer, smiled with satisfaction, seeing the happiness in their eyes. This wasn't just a successful case, it was a monumental moment in her lifelong fight for justice. Lily understood that this victory was more than a sentence for Lucas. It symbolized the power and determination of ordinary people who dared to stand up against injustice and abuse of authority. In this moment of triumph, however, David and Mia also knew this was only the beginning. They had won against one individual, but the system that had protected Lucas and others like him remained. To achieve true change, they and others would need to continue this fight, demanding accountability and transparency at every level. As David, Mia, and Lily exited the hearing room, they were met with a large crowd waiting outside. Community members had gathered to show their support and gratitude. Applause erupted, cheers echoing in the air. Many held signs with messages like "Justice for All," "We stand with David and Mia," and "End abuse of power." Mia was surprised and moved to see the faces of strangers in the crowd, all looking at her with encouragement and admiration. She had once felt so alone and hopeless, but now, with the community's support, she realized her struggle had become the voice of hundreds. maybe even thousands. Every encouraging word and every clap felt like a balm for the pain she had endured. Standing beside her, David's heart swelled with pride. He remembered the sleepless nights, the grueling press conferences, and the moments he had doubted they could make it through. But now, seeing the powerful support from the community, he knew that their efforts had not been in vain. They had fought not just for themselves, but for those who had been oppressed and silenced. Lily joined them, her eyes shining with joy and pride. This was why she had chosen to become a lawyer, to defend those without a voice and bring justice to those who had been overlooked. She knew that David and Mia's journey didn't end here, and that they would need to continue fighting for a fairer justice system. But she also understood that today's victory was a milestone, an inspiration for others to stand up for what is right. The three of them walked through the crowd, receiving hugs, handshakes, and words of congratulations from people they had never met before. An elderly woman approached Mia, took her hand, and said, "Thank you for fighting, not just for yourself, but for all of us." Mia choked with emotion and could only nod and smile, feeling the strength of solidarity and perseverance more profoundly than ever. David and Mia realized that although the battle would continue, they were not alone. The community stood beside them, ready to join in the journey ahead. They were no longer just the ones who had won against Lucas. They had become trailblazers, inspiring others to voice their struggles and fight for their rights. As the afternoon sun shone down on them, David and Mia walked through the crowd, their hearts filled with hope and conviction. They understood that the path ahead would be bumpy and challenging, but they also knew that justice was not a distant dream. It was something everyone had a right to pursue. With the strong support of the community, they were prepared to face any obstacles, for they had tasted the sweetness of victory and recognized the power of unity. This hearing was not only a legal decision but a turning point for the entire community, a powerful reminder that injustice cannot thrive when courageous people stand together. After the hearing, Mia realized that her story had resonated deeply within the community. She received countless messages and letters from people who had endured similar injustices, expressing their gratitude for her courage in standing up for justice. Each message and each story shared not only comforted her, but also fueled her drive to do more. Mia knew that achieving real change required going beyond seeking justice solely for herself. With David by her side, Mia decided to engage in advocacy for judicial reform, collaborating with various nonprofit organizations. They reached out to groups that supported those affected by abuse of power, building a broad coalition to protect and assist those without a voice in their fight. Mia began to speak at workshops, community events, and forums, openly sharing her story, the struggles she had faced, and the resilience she had developed along the way. At one such community event, Mia unexpectedly encountered James, the young officer who had witnessed the injustice she suffered that night. James approached her, his face reflecting a mix of hesitation and determination. "Dr. Mia," he began, his voice trembling, "I want to apologize. That night, I saw the unfairness you were subjected to, but I stayed silent. I should have done something, but I let fear and the need to keep my job hold me back." Mia looked at James with empathy, understanding the courage it took for him to admit his mistake. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder and said, "James, thank you for coming forward and saying this. We all make mistakes. What matters is recognizing them and making a change." She smiled encouragingly. "If you want to join us in fighting for reform, we'll welcome you with open arms." James lowered his head, his face a blend of remorse and resolve. "I've thought a lot about that night. I can't forget the look in your eyes, and now I want to be part of your reform coalition. I want to help make up for my mistakes and show that some officers truly want to see a fairer system." James's decision gave Mia renewed strength. Knowing that a young officer, once silent in the face of injustice, had now committed to standing up for change, gave her hope that even bystanders could transform and become part of the justice movement. Mia and David saw that their journey was beginning to make a difference, not only for those who had been oppressed, but also for those within the system. The Reform Coalition, founded by Mia and David, grew steadily, attracting people from all walks of life: activists, lawyers, teachers, and even police officers who wanted to see a more just system. They organized community talks and workshops, providing a platform for people to share their stories and find support. At these events, Mia and David were not only leaders, but also symbols of resilience and unity. Each time Mia spoke to an audience, she emphasized the importance of not staying silent in the face of injustice. She stressed that each person's voice, when joined with others, became a powerful force that could not be ignored. David, always by her side, shared the struggles they had endured and encouraged people to continue fighting for what was right. During one workshop, Mia stood before a captivated crowd, her eyes shining with conviction as she said, "I used to be afraid, used to think I didn't have the strength to stand up. But now I understand that true strength isn't in power or status, it's in our determination and the support of our community. We can change this system. We can create a society where everyone is treated fairly and with respect." Listening to his wife's words, David felt immense pride and confidence in the future they were building. He looked around at the hopeful faces in the audience, people who didn't just see Mia as someone who fought for her justice, but as a symbol of courage and faith in change. Soon, the coalition's efforts began to yield results. Small, yet meaningful changes were made to complaint handling processes, and training for law enforcement emphasized respecting citizens' rights. Workshops on stress management and conflict resolution were introduced, encouraging officers to approach complex situations with empathy and respect. James, having joined the coalition, became one of the first to enroll in this training program. He felt that he had found a way to make amends and contribute to a healthier work environment. His transformation served as a living testament to the potential for change, inspiring other young officers to speak out about wrongdoings within the system. Through tireless efforts, Mia and David became respected community leaders. They continued to organize events, give speeches, and encourage everyone to raise their voices, building an ever-growing coalition. Standing side by side, Mia and David became enduring symbols of strength and collective will. For them, the pursuit of justice was no longer a personal battle but a mission for everyone. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, but with determination and community support, they would keep moving forward, committed to making their vision of a fairer society a reality. And so, Mia, David, and their coalition achieved not just an initial victory, but laid the foundation for a better future, where justice was not an abstract concept, but a right for everyone. One quiet evening, Mia and David sat together on their porch, looking out at the glimmering lights of their neighborhood and listening to the familiar sounds of life around them. In Mia's hands was a stack of letters she had received recently. Letters from strangers, from people who had faced similar hardships, from families who had followed Mia and David's story. Each letter held words of encouragement, gratitude, and sometimes intimate confessions about the pain they had once endured. As Mia read each line, she felt deeply moved, realizing that their story had touched so many hearts. Letters from a single mother, a man who had suffered abuse of power, or a young student whose belief in justice had been reignited, each message revealed how Mia and David's journey had resonated far and wide, beyond anything they had ever imagined. David placed a hand on Mia's shoulder, his eyes full of pride and affection. "We did it, Mia. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who's ever faced injustice." Mia smiled, her eyes gentle and filled with resolve. "Yes, but I know this is only the beginning. The journey ahead is long, but I believe we'll continue with steadfast hearts and determination." They sat there together, looking into the calm night, savoring the sweet serenity of the moment. The storm of pain and injustice had passed, leaving them with a sense of peace. They had triumphed not only in the legal battle, but also in reclaiming control over their lives and the meaning of their story. On the porch, under the starlit sky, Mia and David looked toward the future, knowing their fight for justice was far from over. What they had been through was part of a longer journey, one they would continue to walk hand in hand, together with their community. They understood that, regardless of the challenges ahead, their love and unity would be their strongest motivation, propelling them forward. In the silence, they felt the change they had helped create, and their hope for a better world grew stronger than ever. Their story, no longer just theirs, belonged to everyone who believed in the power of justice and compassion. Sitting side by side, hand in hand, they were ready to face any challenge, knowing that, together, they could overcome anything. Their journey was still unfolding, but now they had left a legacy, an indelible mark of resilience and determination, a beacon for those who sought justice. And so, Mia and David, together in peace, closed one chapter and opened a future filled with hope and resolve. Their story would forever be aflame, igniting belief in change, justice, and love. Mia and David's story is a testament to the power of courage and persistence in the fight against injustice. Change is never easy, but their actions have inspired hope in all of us. What did you think of the outcome of the hearing? If you were Mia, would you have the courage to stand up for justice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for more meaningful stories. Thank you for watching.